Distracted Dennis and Diligent Danielle. Written by Danielle, illustrated by James O'Keefe and Danielle. "I hate doing homework," said distracted Dennis Doll. Instead he was tempted by a small furry tennis ball, or that cat on its mat, or that crack in the wall. Even the ceiling was appealing, and he stared at it all. This homework was boring. It left Dennis snoring. He'd rather be out on the soccer pitch scoring. He'd rather be dancing or prancing around. He'd rather be out with his friends on the town. Diligent Danielle thought school was just swell. She loved doing homework and loved doing it well. Sums were fun, and at the school's bell, she'd rush to the library to learn about shells. Or cities and countries both near and so far. She learned about space and the moon and the stars. She learned about cars, about buses, about trains. She learned about hands, about feet, about brains. Then Mummy and Daddy checked on the kids. "Have you done your homework? Let's see what you did." Dennis was down in the dumps and scratched at an itch. While Danielle put her work on the fridge, Danielle smiled. She had piled up pages. Dennis sat down and hoped this wasn't graded. "Do your homework!" everyone cried, and distracted Dennis took his bike for a ride. A few hours passed as the clock hands tick. Soon it was time to choose which ice cream to pick. There's chocolate and strawberry, caramel and mint. So many flavours for the children to pick. Oh no, but Dennis had not done his homework yet. So only Danielle got ice cream until she was well fed. "That's not fair," screamed Dennis to Daddy and Mummy, and they replied back, "You have to do your homework before you fill your tummy." Yummy. The very next day, there was more homework to do, but distracted Dennis looked out at a view, then tied up his shoes, found pencils to chew, watched birds as they flew, played with some glue, made shampoo, stew, hopped like kangaroos do, until he was tired and went for a snooze. He woke up fresh as a daisy at dawn. He didn't feel lazy or hazy at all. He wanted to do something crazy for sure, play chasey bike races, throw a ball at a wall, or even just go give Grandma a call. He checked on the fish, danced with a skip and a twist. He played with some sticks, so horrible homework was last on his list. While diligent Danielle did all of her homework before it was due, because Danielle knew it was the right thing to do. Everything Danielle learned was awesome and new. She could name 100 facts that she knew were true. She did her shapes, she named the states, she learned about caves and waves and lakes. She discovered dinosaurs, their names and their traits. She learned about hurricanes, plagues, even snakes. And when it was done, she still wanted to learn more, for Danielle homework was never a bore. Then Mummy and Daddy checked on the kids. "Have you done your homework? Let's see what you did." Dennis was down in the dumps and scratched at an itch. While Danielle put her work on the fridge, Danielle smiled. She had piled up pages. Dennis sat down and hoped this wasn't graded. "Do your homework," everyone cried, and distracted Dennis took his bike for a ride. A few hours passed as the clock hands tick, and soon it was time to choose what movie to pick. There was action, adventure, romance and comedy flicks, and Danielle chose one about a talking pig. Dennis had not done his homework yet, so there were no movies for Dennis. Oh, the regret! "That's not fair!" screamed Dennis to Daddy and Mummy. Meanwhile, Danielle laughed because the movie was funny. The next day after school, there was work for Dennis to do when he got home. And when Dennis got home, he said with a groan, "I have homework to do or I'll be alone." He didn't roam or pick up a stone. He didn't call on the phone or make bubbles from foam. He sat down and looked at what the teacher had given him. He found it not grim and smiled a grin. He was learning about sharks and their fin. He learned about lions and tigers and bears. He learned about feathers and furs and hairs. He learned about this and he learned about that. He learned as much as he could, and that's a fact. "This isn't so bad," he thought to himself, and he grabbed another book off the shelf. He did his maths and worked out hard sums. Now he was learning and having some fun. And when he was finished, he looked outside and said to himself, I want to take my bike for a ride." Diligent Danielle smiled with glee. Now she had her brother to talk to about the sea. They talked about leaves, they talked about trees, they talked about fleas, and what makes you sneeze? Achoo! They went for a ride and rode side by side. They smiled and played as they went down the slide. "Let's see what Mummy and Daddy want to do today," said Danielle, and Dennis agreed. That sounded just swell. Then Mummy and Daddy checked on their kids. "Have you done your homework? Let's see what you did." Dennis stood up, proud he didn't quit. Both Dennis and Danielle put their work on the fridge. Danielle smiled. She had piled up pages. Dennis aspired. "I hope this is graded." "You did your homework, Dennis!" everyone cried. "Yes, I did, and I also took my bike for a ride," Dennis replied. A few hours passed as the clock hands tick, and soon it was time to choose which game to pick. There were board games, dice, and cards with tricks. Dennis and Danielle picked one where you think. And Dennis had done his homework, you bet. So there were games for Dennis. Oh, this is the best. Dennis did not forget. "This is fun," called Dennis to Daddy and Mummy, while Danielle laughed because Dennis's answers were funny.